Success Insight shares the stories of the people with passion and drive who make things happen in the world. Here's your host, Howard Fox.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mind, Body, and Soul series on the Success Insight podcast. The Mind, Body, and Soul series celebrates the journeys and stories from health and wellness professionals who are committed to helping their clients and patients realize their physical, emotional, and spiritual courage and well-being. Our guest today is Dr. Debi Silber. Debi is the founder of the PBT Institute. She is a holistic psychologist, a recognized health, mindset, empowerment, and personal development expert. She's a speaker, coach, and the author of not one, but two best-selling books. The first, The Unshakable Woman, 4 Steps to Rebuilding Your Mind, Body, and Life After a Life Crisis. And her most recently published book, really just released, was From Hardened to Healed, The Effortless Path to Release Resistance, Get Unstuck, and Create a Life You Love. Debi, welcome to Mind, Body, and Soul series on the Success Insight podcast.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to our conversation.
Fantastic. Well, I have to admit, this is a deep conversation, just given the idea of trauma and really the trauma that you have eloquently and openly shared, not only with whether you're on the stage, in a book, in other podcasts. And I find that amazing because so many of us they have some type of trauma, psychological, physical, mental trauma, and they stay within themselves and they don't share. So I would love if, as we get started on today's episode, if you could first share a little bit about your life, and then let's talk about some of this trauma work, and especially about your books, The Unshakable Woman and From Hardened to Healed.
Yeah, thank you. And it's actually my book, Trust Again, where I really map it out for you. So I'll sum it up here. It's actually my 30th year in business, and as life would morph and change, so would business. I started in health and then mindset and personal development. And then I had trauma. I had a really painful betrayal from my family. Thought I did what I needed to do to heal. A few years later, it happened again. This time it was my husband. So I got him out of the house, and I looked at the two experiences, and I thought, well, what's similar to these two? You know, of course, I was the common denominator here. And I thought, okay, something drastic has to change. So I got him out of the house, and I thought, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to enroll in a PhD program. It was in transpersonal psychology. I had 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. I was 50. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it, how I was going to do it, but I knew something drastic had to change. So I started moving through this program, and it really, transpersonal psychology is the psychology of transformation and human potential. I was changing so much, I didn't quite understand what was happening. He was too on his own, wasn't ready to look at that. And then it was time to do a study. So I studied betrayal. What holds us back? What helps us heal? And what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. That study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my business, my health, my family, my life.
Wow. So a question that is immediately top of mind is, what is betrayal? And is it, I mean, when I think of betrayal, I mean, there's not many quote unquote bad words out there. But betrayal is, when you get hit with the word betrayal, you know something's going on here, and it's pretty intense. So what is it?
Yeah, it's like a gut punch. It's you feel it. It's one of those words you feel. I define betrayal as the breaking of a spoken or unspoken rule, and every relationship has them. The way it works is the more you trust, the more you depend on the person, the deeper, the bigger the betrayal. So for example, a child who's completely dependent on their parent and the parent does something awful, that's going to have a different level of cleanup than, let's say, your coworker taking credit for your idea, your best friend sharing your secret. Still a betrayal, but a different magnitude. But the ones where the heart is involved, where there is that trust, where we depend on that person, is more cleanup needed.
When you speak about betrayal, and you mentioned child, the parent doesn't show up at a baseball game, the parents get divorced and they separate. Does betrayal begin potentially for an individual and those effects? So they start really as soon as you're consciously aware something just happened. I'm not sure what it is, but something happened.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just like a betrayal of expectations. Maybe the expectation was mom and dad are going to be there for me in the way I need, and then they're not. And the biggest challenge is once you sort of define what a relationship looks like, you move into life seeking things that are similar, not because they're good, because they're so familiar. So we wind up having a series of relationships that are not supportive, that aren't in our best interest, whatever it is. And so often when we trace it back, it's because, we got those early roots with some limiting beliefs.
When those early roots start off, do those continue later on in our life as we're growing, developing, if we're not aware?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's actually, that was one of the 3 discoveries that really shows itself in one of them in particular. But yeah, I mean, that's just where we find ourselves. And unless and until we consciously take a look to change these beliefs, we will go an entire lifetime with that belief system that's been created early on. And most people do.
Okay. Just to kind of circle back for a second, the 3 discoveries, why don't we talk a little bit about what those are? Because I think that's important to share with our audience.
Sure. So the first one was that betrayal is a very different experience, very different from other types of life crises, death of a loved one, disease, natural disaster. Originally, I was studying betrayal and post-traumatic growth. And for those who aren't familiar, post-traumatic growth is, if you can imagine, kind of an upside of trauma, how that trauma, whatever it is, leaves you with a new awareness, insight, perspective you didn't have. Maybe you lose someone you love, you realize life is short, that kind of thing. But I had been through death of a loved one. I'd been through disease. I was in the ICU for 11 days. And I was like, no, betrayal is a different experience. I didn't want to assume. So I asked all my study participants, and I said, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, does it feel different for you? Unanimously, they said, oh, it's so different. Here's why. Because it feels so intentional, we take it so personally. So the entire self is shattered and has to be rebuilt. Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust. Those things are huge. They all get shattered. So it didn't quite qualify as post-traumatic growth. It was like, yeah, post-traumatic growth, but also rebuilding the self. So I coined a new term, post-betrayal transformation. That's the complete and total rebuild of your life and yourself after an experience with betrayal. That was the first discovery. Want me to go on to the second one?
Yes, ma'am. I think we're on a roll here.
All right. So the second one was that there's actually a collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's now known as post-betrayal syndrome. And we have our post-betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent people are struggling. We've had, I'd say over 40,000 people take it at this point. Men, women, every age, almost every country is represented. A few things about that quiz. One thing is, we've all heard time heals all wounds. I have the proof. That's not, when it comes to betrayal, that's not true. There's a question that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago, I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal happened 15 years ago, feels like it happened yesterday. So we know that's not the case when it comes to betrayal. And every couple of months, I pull the stats from the quiz, happy to share some. So, if that would serve.
Sure.
Okay, so this is figure out of 40,000 people, right? 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. 94% deal with painful triggers. Those triggers will take you right down. These are the most common physical symptoms. 71% have low energy. 68% have sleep issues. 63% extreme fatigue. So you wake up, you're exhausted. 47% have weight changes. So in the beginning, maybe you can't hold food down. Later on, you're using food for comfort. 45% have digestive issues. Anything from Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, you name it. The most common mental symptoms, 78% are overwhelmed. 70% walking around in a state of disbelief, 68% are unable to focus, 64% are in shock, 62% are unable to concentrate. So imagine you can't concentrate, you have a gut issue, you're exhausted, and you're supposed to raise your kids, and you're supposed to work. That's not even the emotional ones. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. 82% feel hurt. 80% have anxiety. 79% are stressed. Here's why I wrote the book Trust Again. Ready? 84% have an inability to trust. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward, and 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
Wow. And these 40,000 now, no doubt, plus participants in this quiz, this data is continuing to get updated. And really, I would imagine the data is probably not shifting too much. It's just showing consistency.
It sure is, which is terrible. When you think of how big these, it's not like 20%. I mean, we're talking like 60, 70, 80%. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. And this is, and people attribute these symptoms to aging, to stress. It's your unhealed betrayal. That's what's causing the symptoms.
Wow. So I'm a big caffeine lover, and sometimes I wake up and I'm too tired. I guess I need to take the quiz, which is a question I'm going to ask you, men versus women, but we're going to get there in a second. Of the three discoveries, so we have there's a difference between, the death, disease, things like that. We've got symptoms, number 3.
Yeah. So the first discovery was post-betrayal transformation. The second discovery was post-betrayal syndrome. The third discovery, to me, this was the most exciting. What we learned was, while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many of us do, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean coming in with symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome to that whole healed, healthy state of post-betrayal transformation, we're going to go through 5 now proven predictable stages.
That was going to be the next part of the discussion.
Right. And what's even more exciting about that is we even know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every one of those stages. And we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. Why is that exciting? Healing is entirely predictable.
Wow.
And I'm happy to share the 5 stages if you'd like.
Well, as a matter of fact, I mean, it's almost like you and I planned this podcast out, but as my listeners know, I try to do a lot of research, and, just fascinating. And a question I'm going to ask you later, we can lop that onto the question about men versus women, is this idea of hope, because if I were to take this at face value with really not diving in, because a lot of us just aren't aware we've had these betrayals. So in some ways, we are walking wounded. Mm-hmm. And how do we continue to get the message out there that, you got to take a step back. Have to tap into yourself, how you're feeling, what you're thinking, and we'll get there. So the 5 stages, I mean, I think of a Kubler-Ross in the stages of grief. So, and I love the fact there's 5 stages. That's easy to remember.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, I'm honored to even be compared with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross with these discoveries. These are physical, mental, and emotional, but they are in fact 5 stages. So I completely mapped them out in Trust Again. It's what we teach within the PBT Institute. It's what all of our coaches are certified in, but I want to share them with you here. I'll give you a distilled version. So stage 1 is before the experience. So if you imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, what I saw with everybody was this real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, the thinking and doing, not really prioritizing the emotional and the spiritual, the feeling and being. That's not to say if you're busy thinking and doing, you will be betrayed. It was the typical profile I saw. If you have a table with only 2 legs, easy for that table to topple over. That's us. Stage 2, by far the scariest of all of the stages. And this is the shock, D-Day, Discovery Day. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. So right here, here, you've ignited the stress response. You're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. You cannot understand and wrap your mind around the information you just learned. And there's a breakdown of the worldview. Your worldview is your mental model. It prevents chaos. It governs you. And in one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, every rule you've had is no longer. The bottom is truly bottomed out on you, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet, so it's terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything you could to stay safe and stay alive. That's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this experience? Where do I go? Who can I trust? How do I feed my kids? Like, it's that practical. Here's the trap, though. This is the stage most people get stuck in, and here's why. Once you've figured out how to survive your experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you just came from, we think it's good. We have no idea there's a stage 4 and stage 5. Transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. So because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we start planting roots here. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. And 4 things happen. The first thing is we get these small self benefits. You know, we get our story. We get to be right. We get a target for our anger. We get sympathy from everybody we tell our story to. We get someone to blame. So we plant deeper roots because we're here longer than we should be. Now the mind starts doing things like, well, maybe you're not that great. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. So you plant deeper roots. We're not supposed to be here, but we don't know that because you're here longer than you should. And these are the thoughts you're thinking. Like energy attracts like energy. Now you're attracting people and circumstances and relationships towards you to confirm, yep, this is where you belong. Gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but we don't know there's anything else, anywhere else to go. Right here is where we resign ourselves. We're like, this stinks. I'm miserable, but I don't know what to do. So right here is where we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, whatever, to numb, avoid, distract ourselves from what's so painful to feel or face. So think about it. You do this for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years out and say, that emotional eating you're doing, that drinking you're doing, that numbing in front of the TV you're doing, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would look at me like I'm crazy. And they'd say, that happened 20 years ago. But you see, all they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay there. That makes sense?
It does. And the question I'm going to ask later is about hope. And it's like, I find it interesting. And well, interesting doesn't even begin to describe it. I see individuals as a coach, and I can see they're stuck in the survival area. In some ways, Debbie, that doesn't give me a lot of hope because what do you do about this?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, From Hardened to Healed is just for stage 3. I mean, I found that that's where most people land and stay. So stage 3ers, I'm coming right for them in From Hardened to Healed. But here's where it gets so hopeful. And that's why I'm just trying to get the message out about the 5 stages. 2, you know, I'm 30 years in business. Yes, I'm a psychologist, but I'm a coach first. So it's always forward moving. So here's the thing. When you're willing to let go of those small self benefits and everything you get from them, you grieve, you mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do. You move to stage 4. Watch how hopeful this is. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. Here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo my experience, but I control what I do with it. And I always use the example of if you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, your stuff isn't all there. It's not quite cozy yet, but it's going to be okay. When you're in that mental space, what you're doing is you're turning down the stress response. Now, you're not physically healing just yet, but at least you stop the massive damage you had been causing in stages 2 and stage 3. What's also interesting is if you were to move, you don't take everything, you know, with you. You don't take the things that don't represent who you want to be when you're in that new space. And what I found was if your friends weren't there for you, you don't take them with you. Right here's where you've outgrown them. So people say to me all the time, what the heck? I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. And if they don't rise, they don't come. I see it all the time. When you're in this stage 4, and you're in this mental space, making this cozy, making this home, you move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. You didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now you do. Your mind is healing. You're making new rules. You're making new boundaries based on what you see so clearly now. And you have a new worldview based on your entire experience. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Definitely, there's some hope here. And I love the fact that, from stage 3, there's an awareness that there's another way of thinking rather than, settling in with our ego or whatever is protecting us. Oh, it's you. Don't worry about it. I'll, just go have another, sugar donut, whatever. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of information. So you have trust, you have the unshakable women, you have hardened to healed. You're not just writing a couple books out here. There's more to it than that. And so talk about your program and how are women, men, and I imagine that runs men and women, but I imagine that runs the age gamut as well. So how are individuals finding you? When do they realize I need to do something, and who out here can help me? How do I find Dr. Debi Silber?
Well, we have 2 different types of people that come into the Institute, and it's the people who they are blindsided. They're just like, what the heck happened? My whole life just upended, And so that's who comes in. But we also have those people stuck in stage 3, and their betrayal may have happened decades ago. And they finally realized they've been compromising their health, their wellness, their life, their sanity, and staying stuck truly is a choice. Truly is a choice. And I look at it like, you've been through the worst of it already. You owe it to yourself to heal. So you asked about the Institute. The way it happened was, you can't make discoveries and go back to business as usual, So when the 5 stages were discovered, I put that into a program. I said, I have to get this out to people. I mean, I've never heard of anything like this. And it blew up. And then I was like, okay, people wanted to work with me. I'm like, how do I leverage me? So I created our certification program. Then we kept getting responses to the post-betrayal syndrome quiz. So I was seeing clearly what wasn't working. I also knew what wasn't working from just the research that I had done, which was, people would just run to the doctor to put them on a mood stabilizer or anti-anxiety medication. They were just numbing, avoiding, distracting, or they would see, let's say, a therapist. And if that therapist isn't highly skilled in betrayal, it actually does more harm than good. We have a lot of people coming into the Institute with therapy trauma. And then I saw people would find a support group, but it was more like the Ain't It Awful Club. Like someone would share about their experience and someone would be like, oh, you think that's bad? This happened to me and this happened to me. Where almost like when you heal, you don't belong. And I was like, okay, so I know it doesn't work. I know what the research proved. I see what people need. What would happen if we put everything that works under one roof? That's the PBT Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute. So we have our certified coaches teaching daily classes in their area of expertise. They know the 5 stages, but in their area of expertise, our signature programs, a very supportive community to lift and inspire, a bunch of stuff. There's nothing like it.
Now, is this program, and thinking with COVID last year, I imagine this program is easily, it'd be nice if it was a in-person out at a retreat somewhere. I mean, for our listeners, behind Debi is these wonderful, I think it's cherry blossoms. Did I get that right? Okay.
You did.
And it's a wonderful picture. I'm thinking that would be a nice place to have a retreat. But I imagine you do this as a retreat, virtual or in person.
It's completely virtual. We actually had the PBT Institute. It was a live physical space, and even our local people wanted to be online. And because we serve people all over the world, we're completely online, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's a great way to stay connected, and all of our classes are recorded, so people wherever they are in the world can just watch them when they can, if they can't participate live. And the groups, the forum aspects, that's 24/7. We even have a PBT cafe where you stop in every morning for your morning cup of inspiration. It's an amazing space. It's like how AA is to alcohol, the PBT Institute is for betrayal.
Very good. And do your clients come to you knowing which stage they're in, or does everybody start from, yeah, perhaps you are in stage 3, but we're going to start at stage 1? You have to go through each stage one at a time?
Not necessarily. It depends how they're coming in. If they take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz, we'll sort of assess based on their symptoms. But we have our healed or hardened quiz, which actually tells us exactly the stage someone is in. And the beautiful part of it is, it's predictable. I mean, it's almost like, I picture those an amusement park with those little kid rides. As long as that child is willing to sit there in that car with the seatbelt on, they will predictably get to the end of the ride. That's how this is. If you are willingness is the biggest factor here. You're willing to move through the stages, you will predictably move through those stages of post-betrayal syndrome to that whole healed state of post-betrayal transformation. I have yet to see someone stronger than someone who's healed from betrayal. I mean, think about it. This was the person, these were the people who gave you a sense of safety and security. So when this is the person, those are the people to shatter it. It's a lot to heal from, but I will tell you, healing is always a choice. Whether you rebuild yourself and move on, that's what I did with my family. It wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something entirely, I'm talking from the ground up new, with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. Not long ago, as two totally different people, we married each other again. New rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids as our bridal party. I can promise you, never in a bazillion years would I have ever considered something like that if I wasn't different, and for sure if he wasn't radically different. But wow. Betrayal will show you who someone truly is, or it will wake them up to who they temporarily became.
Wow. Is there a difference in men coming into a program like this versus women? Because I mean, well, I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah. The biggest thing we see is men are, and I feel bad for the guys because they're not encouraged to seek support for something.
That was
like
actually what I was going to start to get into, but I figured I was going to let you touch on this. And
it's such a shame because they're experiencing the same symptoms, the same trauma, the same heartbreak, but they're just told, muscle up, get over it. She was horrible anyway, whatever it was, and it's not fair. It's not fair because I meet with those men and they're in a tremendous amount of pain. It takes a tremendous amount of bravery to be vulnerable. And the ones who do are the ones that heal. Listen, I even see it from my own experience. I'm a very private person, and here I am talking about my betrayal all over the place. But it's about the message. It's not about me, But I remember sharing the first time. It was absolutely terrifying. But
so you shared up on a TEDx stage, and how was it? How do you take your life experience and turn that into? I mean, the TEDx is like 11 minutes, 13 minutes.
Yeah, actually, I did 2. And my first one, Stop Sabotaging Yourself, was 6 weeks after my betrayal. I don't even know how I did it. I mean, I can't even watch that one because I see the pain on my face. No, no one else would have known. The second one, Do You Have Post-Betrayal Syndrome? That was, I made the decision to do that talk because of how transformative these findings were and how helpful it is to know, there's actually a roadmap here. There's it's like there's a lifeline, and I can just do this and do that and do this and that, and I can get out of this mess that I can't even imagine getting out of. So to me, that was so exciting, and I really wrestled with it because of just how personal this is. I even sat my whole family down in trust again. My whole story's in there, and it's pretty vulnerable. And I sat them all down thinking my kids would be like, "Oh, come on, Mom," and they said, "Mom, you're going to help so many people." My absolute biggest supporter was my husband. He said, "You know what? You're going to show a lot of people that betrayers can change." I mean, and think about it, to imagine how much change he must have undergone to be so willing to support and get behind, the PBT Institute, which was pretty much birthed, off of the trauma. So
how does the betrayer realize they are the betrayer and go and get help?
Yeah, they don't always, they have a tremendous amount of shame. And how do you heal shame? You bring light to it, you bring honor to it. But for a lot of betrayers, there's no empathy. And there's no waking up, on to the next victim. So that's why I said, betrayal will show you who someone truly is, right? Or it absolutely wakes them up. You wake up when you lose everything that matters. And that's exactly what happened with my husband. What I see though is so many people are so afraid of that complete and utter death and destruction of the old. And I get it, it's terrifying. But it's only with that death and destruction of the old can you birth the new. And, when people just try to turn the other cheek, try to put it behind them, and we saw this a lot. There were actually 3 groups who did not heal. One was numbing, avoiding, distracting. Another group refused to accept their betrayal. And the third group, this was the group where the betrayer had no consequences or very little consequences. And I saw 2 things with this group. Number one, a further deterioration of the relationship. And the second thing was this group was the most physically sick. Your broken heart can't handle that, but I get it. It was whether it was out of religious reasons, that was a big one, not wanting to break up a family, fear of the unknown, financial fear. They just tried to put it behind them. But we see very rarely is that in the betrayed's or even the betrayer's best interest.
2 questions there coming to mind is, one, is a program like yours taking individuals through these stages? Mm-hmm. Can it be successful, say, in a corporate environment? Because I'm thinking leaders, many of them are type A. There's a lot of times a leader is narcissistic. It's all about me. How do you help somebody there? That's the first part, Debbie. Mm-hmm. Second part, I was curious about the cultural impact, because, here in the US, even within our country, we have different cultural, for sake of better words, patterns, how we live, how we think. And now you go into Asia, Africa, Middle East. Yeah.
So for your first question about corporate, a few things. First of all, I do a tremendous amount of speaking, and I am now that things are opening up, getting back into corporate. And it's really important to bring this message into corporate for 2 reasons. Number one, betrayals happen at work. That's the first thing. But the second thing is an unhealed betrayal is impacting someone's performance at work. Right? Like for example, they may want that raise or promotion, they deserve it, but their confidence was shattered. So so they don't ask, and they're bitter and resentful instead, right? Or they want to be a team player, collaborative partner, but the person they trusted the most proved untrustworthy. How do they trust that boss, that coworker? So it shows up everywhere. So it's really important to bring this message into corporations. I think it's very powerful, and especially in leadership. You can't show up powerfully. Betrayal happens it doesn't decide, I'm going to bypass you and I'll go to you. No. So if you are a leader, you cannot be the leader you want to be with an unhealed betrayal. You just heard the symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome. Think about it. If you're not sleeping, if you're exhausted, if you have a gut issue, if you're not confident, it's going to affect all that. So really important there. As far as the different cultures, I don't truly know what goes on in other cultures because I'm not from there. But what I can say is we do have members in the community who have very different cultures where betrayal is a very known thing. It's just what goes on. But as they grow, as they heal, as they change, they decide not only is that partner not the right fit, sometimes that culture isn't the right fit anymore.
As you are continuing to evolve your work, and you've talked about you have this community where the clients can come together and have the morning pick me up, coffee, juice, whatever. Mm-hmm. And the value of that, because they've learned to be open, vulnerable, and be present. How do you also continue to develop your professionals who you've certified to keep them at the top of their game?
Yeah, I meet with them every month. I'm in communication with them all the time. And they, the ones who work within the community, they're teaching on their area of expertise. Like I said, they're all certified in the 5 stages, but I'm bringing in experts with 10, 20, 30 plus years in specialties, and everybody specializes in something else, because I want our members to have this smorgasbord of anything that can help them heal. So we have coaches who specialize in narcissism, in divorce, in reconciliation, in chronic pain, in addiction. And the whole idea is they're staying at the top of their game because they're showing up. It's actually a hack in a weird kind of way for some of our coaches and practitioners, where they know they're showing up. They can't afford to go down that rabbit hole. Like, listen, I'm an example of it too, right? I know I'm speaking on this topic. I'm representing this topic, and it keeps me honest. I can't let a trigger take me and keep me all the way down. I mean, it just doesn't work that way anymore. But even so, because then I would always have that imposter syndrome, and I don't want to deal with it. So I'd rather just do the work.
I love it. And I do love the fact that at the time of taking the quiz, you help or determine who the best, it sounds like, the practitioner is to work with that particular individual. So they are working in their sweet spot and continuing to develop.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on which level of membership, but we even have this beautiful onboarding process where we get to know you a little bit. And based on that, there's a private one-on-one welcome call with our client care specialist, and she'll get to know the member enough to say, hey, what do you like? What's your biggest struggle? Where are you now? So that she can kind of match them up, not even with a certain set of classes that may be a fit, or a coach that may be a fit, but even other members, if that's what they want, so they can buddy up with someone. It's a beautiful process in an area that it's like where we struggle the most and we're the least likely to seek support. We wanted just this process that makes it easy.
Very good. Debi, before we head out, I want to just real quickly circle back to your books.
Yeah.
Now, the first one was Trust.
Trust Again.
Trust Again.
Trust Again, Overcoming Betrayal and Regaining Health, Confidence, and Happiness. And that's where I map out the 5 stages. I walk you through with experiential activities and the 4-step trust rebuilding process. My story, it's all in there.
Okay. And The Unshakable Woman, that was book number 2.
That was actually before Trust Again. Yeah. And that was an Amazon. Actually, From Hardened to Healed is my 6th book.
Okay, so we got to go back and update your show notes.
That's okay. I write a lot of books. It's okay. But From Hardened to Healed is just when I saw that people were getting stuck in stage 3, I said, you know what? Stage 3 needs its own book. So From Hardened to Healed is just for the stage 3ers.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, I have no doubt your institute, and I know you have some access to the quizzes there. So talk a little bit more about when individuals, how do they get there, and what are they going to find once they get out to your website?
Yeah, thank you. So the site is the PBT, as in post-betrayal transformation, thepbtinstitute.com. And you'll see on the navigation tab, it says quiz. And I recommend everybody take the Healed. You'll see the Healed or Hardened quiz right there.
Okay.
Or the post-betrayal syndrome quiz. You can't go wrong. You need to know where you are so you know what to do with it.
I know I'm going to be going back out there taking the quiz. I'm still single, so what the heck? So there's something way back in the beginning.
It always is. We think it's something recent, and when we look back, I do this a Trust Again challenge every so often, and on the first day, I give them an activity to do, and they are always shocked, blown away that they thought it was their most recent experience, but it was actually something from a long time ago that created a set of beliefs that kept them a certain way.
As a coach, I totally am on target with that one, definitely. Besides your website, the pbtinstitute.com, any social sites you would like to send our listeners to?
Just look up my name. I'm on all of them.
Okay. So we'll provide the backlinks to the social sites, of course, your website, and also we'll point them to the quizzes, and we'll also have all the books listed up on our show notes. Debi, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Mind, Body, and Soul series on the Success Insight podcast. What a topic. This is not for the lighthearted, conversations, and sometimes it's good to go deep and really get people perhaps out of their comfort zone. And I love that you literally, this is not even that qualifies as an appetizer. It's like going to Costco and getting something down one of the aisles. You just get a taste, that's it. So thank you for providing that taste of your work and really the importance of betrayal and why we need to address it. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Very good. All right, folks, we have just been chatting with Dr. Debi Silber, psychologist, health, mindset speaker, best-selling author of multiple books, and we'll provide all the show notes links to that. She is the founder and CEO of the PBT Institute, and really just a wonderful conversation about betrayal, really her breakthrough research, and also how to begin to navigate individuals, her clients, through the 5 stages of betrayal to breakthrough, and really just a very important conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would love to hear from you. You can find us on successinsightpodcast.com. You can find us on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Our links are Success Insight Podcast there. We're also on all of the major podcasting platforms, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and especially Spotify, where we have the Mind, Body, and Soul playlist that you can also download this episode and any of our other episodes. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day. Take care of yourselves, your family. Wear your mask if it makes sense. Practice social distancing if it makes sense. But above all, take care of yourself and take care of your community. And we'll see you on another episode in the near future of the Mind, Body, and Soul series on the Success Insight Podcast. Take care now.
Success Insight is a production of Fox Coaching and First Story Strategies. Find us online, successinsightpodcast.com.